82 record-breaking games have led us to this point. Game 1 tonight of the Stanley Cup playoffs against the Florida Panthers. We are previewing that series today with Armando Velez of Locked On Panthers. So let's get into it.
You're Locked On Bruins, your daily podcast on the Boston Bruins. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, Bruins fans, and welcome back to the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Ian McLaren, and this is a daily Boston Bruins show where we discuss all things Spoked B. Today is Monday, April 17th, and I want to thank you so much for making Locked On Bruins part of your day every single day, free and available on your favorite podcast app as well as on YouTube. Please subscribe and become an everyday listener. Today's episode is brought to you by HelloFresh. Skip trips to the grocery store and count on HelloFresh to make home cooking easy, fun, and affordable. That's why it's America's #1 meal kit. Go to HelloFresh.com/NHL60 and use code NHL60 for 60% off plus free shipping. Game 1, Stanley Cup playoffs. Puck drops tonight at 7:30 p.m. Eastern, TD Garden. Who will the banner captain be, and who will prevail in Game 1? We are going to talk about the series as a whole today with Armando Velez of Locked On Panthers for a full series preview. Let's just get into it. Without further ado, here is the opening round preview crossover between Locked On Bruins and Locked On Panthers. All right, folks, 82 games have been played. This year's President's Trophy winners taking on last year's President's Trophy winners. And myself, Ian McLaren, host of Locked On Boston Bruins, joined with Armando Velez of Locked On Panthers to tee up this first round series, which should be a good one. And Armando, how are you feeling about this series coming into a season where I guess the Panthers have maybe lower expectations than they did this time last year?
Yeah, lower expectations for sure. And you said it from the top. Last year's President's Trophy winners versus this year is going to be the first time ever in NHL history that the current President's Trophy winner will be going against the reigning President's Trophy winners from
Armando,
the year before in round one.
Bomb.
Yep.
I didn't know that. Nice.
So first time ever since it was handed out in the mid 80s. So yeah, it's a big challenge for the Florida Panthers ahead. Fun fact, points wise, they are closer to last place in the Eastern Conference than they are the Boston Bruins as far as record wise in points. With, of course, they have 92. The Boston Bruins have 135, an NHL record based on wins and points. So it's a tall task, that's for sure.
Mm-hmm. For you, what do you think is the biggest storyline heading into this round for the Panthers? Is it? I've been saying Alex Lyon, but I guess it's Alex Lyon. Is that one of the big storylines, or what else is going on for the Panthers? What do Bruins fans need to know?
It has to be Alex Lyon because he has been part of why the Florida Panthers have gotten here in the first place. I mean, he's had two different stints with the Florida Panthers as far as streaks of starting. I mean, it started really in late January when Sergei Bobrovsky gets hurt in Montreal. He comes in the latter part of the game. He starts the rest of the way until the All-Star break. And really what changed the season for the Florida Panthers was really that win on January 28th against the Boston Bruins heading into the All-Star break. That was an Alex Lyon start at the time. He was keeping them into the game. And Barkov scores with 3 seconds left. Sam Reinhart scores in overtime for the Florida Panthers to get that win at the time. And they hadn't had a 3-game winning streak at that time. And then they had one shortly after the All-Star break ended, one a month later, and then of course 6 games to get in to the postseason. Of course, with a little help of the Pittsburgh Penguins losing. And Alex Lyon has been just that. And of course, even when the wins weren't coming for the Florida Panthers, it's been the Matthew Tkachuk show, getting 109 points for the Panthers in this season. And even though the Florida Panthers have dealt with injuries, Anthony Duclair only came back in late February. Barkov has missed double-digit games as well for the Panthers as well. And the Panthers are currently without Sam Bennett, who he will be not be suiting up in game 1 of this first round series. He's been out since late March, so already a big task ahead for the Cats.
Yeah, I was talking about Tkachuk's performance. I could see a world where Connor McDavid wins the Hart Trophy, but both Tkachuk and Pastrnak could be finalists for that award with him for sure. And just the goaltending, that's such a huge part of it. Is it? I'm not even sure myself what the answer to this is. Is it Lyon starting because he's just been that much better than Bobrovsky as of late, or is Bobrovsky dealing with something, or why hasn't he, the $10 million man, been the guy down the stretch here?
Well, when the Panthers were off of losing 4 straight games, when the Florida Panthers were going into Toronto in late March, Sergei Bobrovsky was announced to have a non-COVID illness, and then Alex Lyon took the start, won 6 straight after that, and Bobrovsky didn't necessarily lose the job. Alex Lyon gained the job in that stretch, and of course, scraping out a point against the Toronto Maple Leafs in the second to last game of the season, and then I thought that maybe Bob could have started in that last one against Carolina to get kind of going a little bit to knock off some of the rust. But Paul Maurice, he's looking at this as, let me see what I got in my current goaltender still, and to keep him fresh as well, because he got this team to this point. Why not start Alex Lyon right now for the Panthers?
Yeah, totally. The whole hot hand thing. I guess for the Bruins, the biggest storyline, mentioned it off the top, President's Trophy curse. The Panthers made it to the second round last year, so it's not a case where they, like Tampa Bay a few years ago. That's always what people bring up these days when it comes to dominant regular season. Go out and get swept by the Columbus Blue Jackets. The Panthers won a round last year, lost to those very same Lightning, and we'll see if they are able to beat Toronto again this season. I think we're both rooting. Well, maybe not yourself. I don't know if you would root for the Lightning, being a fellow Florida team, but
no.
It's hard to root for Tampa Bay, but it's always fun to root for Toronto not doing anything. As far as the Bruins, I mean, that's the biggest storyline. Can they carry over that regular season success into the playoffs? I was looking back over their season, and there was one stretch where they lost 4 of 5 games, another stretch where they lost 3 of 4, and that was pretty much the only dips in their performance this season. There was losses here and there. You know, they lost to a game in Arizona, lost a game to Chicago. I mean, that's going to happen over the course of a regular season. You're going to lose here and there. But as far as losing streaks or in the playoffs, 4 out of 7, they had one stretch where they lost 4 out of 5. Now, having said that, Florida was one team that did give them problems this season. The Bruins allowed a league low 2.12 goals per game. Against Florida, that jumped up to 3.75, I think. Florida scored the most goals against the Bruins out of any team this season. You mentioned that game that they won in overtime. I think there was like a 5-2 decision that Florida won as well. All of those games, of course, came before the trade deadline, where the Bruins arguably got better on the blue line. Dmitry Orlov added some toughness in Hathaway, brought in Tyler Bertuzzi. So it's kind of a different team that Boston is icing at the moment. But yeah, will they be able to suppress the Panthers' amazing offensive attack? That's going to be a big question. And, you know, we talk about the goaltending, Alex Lyon. The Bruins don't have a ton of experience goaltending wise when it comes to Linus Ullmark, Jeremy Swayman. Swayman played a couple games a couple years ago. He came in against Carolina last year. Linus Ullmark didn't steal the show against Carolina in the first round, lost last year either, to the point where he was replaced by Swayman. So that's probably one of the biggest questions as well, is that otherworldly goaltending that we saw from Linus Ullmark. Can he carry that over into the playoffs? And can the Bruins overcome this President's Trophy curse? We'll talk about predictions later on in the show, but with all due respect to the Panthers, if there is a President's Trophy curse, I don't think it's going to rear its head in the first round, but we'll see what happens. And we'll touch on some players to keep an eye on in the series here in a moment. But first, a word about today's sponsor, which is Athletic Greens. They're a partner of the Locked On Podcast Network that is revolutionizing the way people absorb their nutrients, minerals, vitamins, whole food source superfoods, probiotics, and adaptogens every day. With just one scoop of AG1, you can absorb all of that stuff to start your day right. It's a special blend of ingredients that supports your gut health, your nervous system, your immune system, energy, recovery, focus, aging, basically all the things. Athletic Greens was created when the founder experienced a ton of health issues and ended up on a complicated supplement routine that cost him about $100 a day. And he created Athletic Greens after experiencing how difficult it is to create an optimal nutrition routine. You can reclaim your health and arm your immune system with convenient daily nutrition. Just one scoop in a cup of water every day. That's it. No need for a million different pills and supplements to look out for your health. Athletic Greens is giving you a free 1-year supply of immune-supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. Just visit athleticgreens.com/NHL Network to take ownership over your health and pick up the ultimate daily nutritional insurance. And on Tuesday's episodes of Locked On Bruins and Locked On Panthers, you can get full coverage of Game 1 from myself, from Armando, and just get all the latest on both teams by subscribing and becoming an everyday listener of Locked On Bruins, Locked On Panthers, all, 32 teams, but 16 playoff teams as well. All right, Armando, we talked about Alex Lyon earlier. What are some of the other key matchups or key players to watch on the Florida side of this series?
We already mentioned Matthew Tkachuk, we already mentioned Alex Lyon, but it's also got to be another 40-goal scorer in Carter Verhaeghe, who's manning that, who's on that left wing with Alexander Barkov and Sam Reinhart. And I was looking at the lines, the 5v5 lines for both the top 6 of both the Florida Panthers and the Boston Bruins. Both the top lines for the Panthers have a Corsi for of over 60% at 5-on-5, while the top line for Boston, theirs is also 60%, while the second line of Pavel Zacha, Tyler Bertuzzi, and David Pastrnak are at 56%. So two high possession teams for in this series. But the Boston Bruins are more of a, from what I've seen, are more of a like a medium pace type of team. From what I've seen, they're very great at slowing the game down. And this is where this one player, if the Florida Panthers are going to win this series, and they need Anton Lundell to really match up well against that second line, because he's right now on that second line, of course, due to Sam Bennett being out currently. Chances are he could return in the series and all that. Didn't really work out with going on Barkov's wing early in the season, but has found a little bit of a home with that Tkachuk and Eetu Luostarinen line. Their goal differential at 5v5 is +4 right now. But this was a line that was formed a little later in the season. So let's see how they could match up with the Zacha, Bertuzzi, and Pastrnak line. Of course, Pastrnak is a 60-goal scorer. He's gonna be a little tough to contain. And looking back at the game logs and some of the highlights, Pastrnak scored in every single game in this four game series in the regular season for the Florida Panthers and the Boston Bruins as well. Sam Reinhart also likes scoring against the Boston Bruins as well. He scored 3 times. Of course, we talk about that game winner on the 28th, a big season changing win for the Panthers. But I'm also looking at the likes of an Eric Staal as well, because last time he was in the postseason with Montreal, he helped them get to the Stanley Cup final where they eventually lost to the Tampa Bay Lightning. Of course, he was great in that postseason run for the Habs at the time. And also Anthony Duclair, he just got his second goal of the season on game 82. It was kind of a garbage time goal for the Panthers as they were making a late surge, but it's only his second goal of the season. Of course, coming off the Achilles injury is tough to get your game back. Of course, he's showing great speed, but he's a little bit snake bitten right now. But is he going to be able to finish his chances in this series? And it's going to be a tall task. I mean, the top 4 as far as the D pairs as well. If you don't have Dmitry Orlov and Charlie McAvoy on, you still have to deal with Hampus Lindholm and Brandon Carlo there. So that's a tough D-core to get past.
Yeah. Duclair's a guy I've always loved. Love to see him get back to full strength, but maybe we'll push that to next season instead of over the next couple of weeks. For the Bruins, we talked about Linus Ullmark a little bit. I mean, David Pastrnak, obviously he could carry the Bruins as he had all season long. For me, one of the key players to watch for the Bruins is Taylor Hall. He has missed a ton of games down the stretch. He just returned for the last, I think, 2 of the last 3 or 3 of the last 4. And I talked a couple weeks ago about how the Bruins could very well have the best third line of all teams in the playoffs. Bergeron's missed practice on Saturday and Sunday, but the expectation is he'll be in the lineup. The trickle-down effect there is that the third line should be Taylor Hall, Charlie Coyle, and Tyler Bertuzzi. And if Taylor Hall can show some jump and come up with some big goals that the Bruins have been counting on him scoring, then I think he could be an X factor in the series. It's crazy to think that a guy who was drafted first overall, it was like 13 years ago, but still, he's kind of a forgotten player on this team because he had been injured down the stretch and because he's pretty far down the totem pole when it comes to the leadership group. So he doesn't have any pressure on him. That third line, him, Bertuzzi, Coyle can hopefully just cook against some lesser defensive matchups down the lineup. And that kind of stuff is what wins championships. We saw that for the Bruins back in 2011, third and fourth lines that just stepped up and were huge for them. You mentioned also the defensive assignments. There's some question. The Bruins have like 8 healthy defensemen at the moment who could play. Jakub Zboril probably won't get any playing time. If he does, that means that something has gone pretty wrong for the Bruins, but there's a decision to be made as to whether Derek Forbort, who missed the last several weeks of the season, thanks to the LTIR gods for making that happen, he can come back. Do they replace Matt Grzelcyk, who is very strong 5-on-5? I know plus minus is not really a stat that we put too much stock into anymore, but Hampus Lindholm, Matt Grzelcyk, Brandon Carlo finished 1, 2, 3 in the NHL in plus minus this year. He has a ton of value, 5-on-5, can move the puck, can play on the power play in a pinch. Do you take him out of the lineup, put in Forbort for his penalty killing prowess, his willingness to block shots? That's going to be key. And I think that could be fluid throughout the series where we'll see guys coming in and out on the blue line. The Bruins kind of did that when everybody was healthy. And I think that's something we could see here based on I think I said this a couple of weeks ago. How often do you hear in the regular season the importance of like matchups and last change? We only hear about that in the playoffs, it seems, and having home ice advantage, getting to have that last change where you can have ideal defensive matchups. You could see a situation where Derek Forbort's coming out, Matt Grzelcyk staying in, but I really think that that's going to be a key matchup. And looking at Matthew Tkachuk, he's a guy that could very well take over the series for the Panthers. I've seen even people say he's the best player in the series. But I think, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, he's going to kind of have a lot of expectations where it's like he's going to be counted on to drive things offensively, but also kind of muck it up and become a pest. And that's a lot for him to carry, where the Bruins can have a bunch of guys who can play that pest role. Garnet Hathaway was brought in. Bertuzzi, I mentioned. Trent Frederick, Brad Marchand, of course, and other guys that can step up like a Taylor Hall and score those big goals. So I think, like you said, Lundell, the second line matchup, I think the third line could really turn the tide in this series here as well.
Yeah, and the third line for the Florida Panthers, Lomberg, Eric Stahl, Anthony Duclair, their Corsi for percentage is under 30%. So that is a matchup. That is a matchup that favors the Boston Bruins there. And listen, for this series matchup, you have kind of some similar characteristics, like defensive forwards, Alexander Barkov, who's won a Selke Trophy, and Patrice Bergeron, who they should just change the trophy to his name. For that elite goal scorers, and Carter Verhaeghe, Matthew Tkachuk, and then of course David Pastrnak on it. That pass, Matthew Tkachuk, Brad Marchand, the hits leader, the Radko Gudas, and the Connor Cliftons of the world as well. So each team has different of those personalities and those traits. But as far as multiple players in certain categories, I mean, blocks. The Boston Bruins have 4 guys who have 100 plus block shots. The Panthers have 3 hits. The Boston Bruins have 6 guys over 100, while the Florida Panthers have 5. But one of them is currently missing out of the lineup. Sam Bennett finished 3rd in hits, and he's missed the last 10 plus games of the season. So that's the fact that they're missing that part of the Florida Panthers lineup is just really they're gonna. I feel like the Panthers are really going to miss Sam Bennett in this series, and that's why earlier I said Lundell was that guy to hopefully take control of that second line and hopefully neutralize what the Boston Bruins are going to bring, because things just looking at that, it favors Boston big time.
We're going to wrap up here in a moment by answering some more burning questions, looking at some key stats, and making our final predictions. But I want to thank you all once again for making Locked On Bruins, Locked On Panthers part of your day every day. Like I said earlier, every dayers tomorrow on our respective shows, you'll get full coverage of Game 1, the results, the hot stories, any injuries that come up, and keep it locked to both Locked On Panthers and Locked On Bruins throughout the course of the Stanley Cup playoffs. Armando, I'll turn it over again to you. Do you have any, you mentioned those were amazing. I didn't even realize those stats there that you mentioned. Any other kind of burning questions you have, or some key stats, guys who should step up for the Panthers in this one?
Yeah, a few stats is I was sent an article about the series preview from Jack Hahn, and really how it might not be as much of a mismatch as we anticipated. I'm not saying that the Florida Panthers are favored by any stretch of the imagination, but the Florida Panthers, as far as chances off the forecheck, they could really hopefully put take the Bruins out of their game by how they chip it up the boards and do the dump and chase game, and winning those board battles to get it back to the point, and of course before the Boston Bruins can have an opportunity to block a shot, get it to the goaltender, because they're one of those teams who know how to do that well. But as far as defensive structure for the Panthers, I mean, they're the worst team of the 16 teams statistically, 22nd in the NHL. who as far as giving up opportunities as well, and the penalty kill, it's an issue. The matchup to watch really is the Bruins power play, even though it's 12th in the NHL versus the penalty kill. How can the Panthers neutralize that part of the Boston Bruins? And the same article spoke about how when the Panthers are in that 1-2-1 formation and the Boston Bruins force it one way, it drags the top guy over to one side, and even one on the wing over to the right, or even maybe even to the left, and then a cross ice pass can have two Boston Bruins right up to get a one timer, even without a block shot opportunity and limited traffic as well. So that's one thing to really look at as far as the Panthers penalty kill. But as far as if the Panthers are going to find a way to control this series and even to win it, it's going to be their opportunities to create the broken plays for the Panthers. So, and it's easier said than done, that's for sure.
Yeah, I mean, that's one area for me as well. Talking about special teams, the Bruins, like you said, finished 12th on the power play, but they really struggled down the stretch. They went through several games where it was just not happening. I think over the last few games, they got it going a little bit, but that was with David Krejci out of the lineup. Tyler Bertuzzi was popped up. When everybody's healthy, we'll have some options on the power play. It should be better than it is with the likes of Pastrnak, Marchand, Bergeron out there, Charlie McAvoy. Having said that, Boston's penalty kill has been outstanding all season long. They finished first. A lot of that was put on Derek Forbort being in the lineup, but they maintained that even when he was out of the lineup, which again raises the question of whether he should be in the lineup or not. The Panthers, we all know how much they can score in bunches. For the Bruins, for me, the stats are pretty obvious. They were second overall in goals per game, so they can match up with anybody offensively, save for maybe the Edmonton Oilers. And then, like I said, they finished first in goals allowed per game. They were 2.12. The next closest was Carolina at 2.56. Again, that went way up against the Panthers in those 4 games that they played. And that was the reason why they went out and got a guy like Dmitry Orlov. They can theoretically have a top pairing defenseman on each pairing if they decided to split McAvoy, Lindholm, and Orlov onto 3 different pairings. Probably won't happen, but still, that's an option. So, I mean, it's not really too deep on my end looking at advanced stats. I know when I've been doing the power rankings, the Panthers have always been up there in terms of shot attempt differential, scoring chances,
expected goals.
Yeah, expected goals. The Bruins also have been 1 or 2 all year in shooting percentage, save percentage, 5-on-5. Now is the question for me has been, are they due for regression, or are they going to be able to sustain that through the postseason? And the Panthers will be a tough test in terms of showing that Linus Ullmark is up to the task in net and that the Bruins defensively can withstand one of the better attacks in the NHL. So that's kind of my, those are my kind of key stats and burning questions. I guess we can wrap up with official predictions for the series. Armando, I'll let you go first. Who wins, and in how many games do you see this series needing?
For in the National Hockey League is that one league where sometimes you have to be really hot in order to get in. I know I've spoken about the 96 Red Wings who lost to the Avalanche, funny enough, in that same year, the highest scoring team was the Pittsburgh Penguins, who the Florida Panthers beat. And then, of course, that Avs-Panthers 96 final, which the Panthers didn't win a game there. And then, of course, a few years ago with the Tampa Bay Lightning, them getting swept by Columbus, Sergei Bobrovsky just being incredible in that one. Artemi Panarin as well, Seth Jones, the likes of them.
Duchesne was good
Matt
in that series.
Yeah. So, but and there's also playoff experience for the Panthers on the roster. They 4 years in a row that now they're in the dance. The culture in South Florida is there for hockey. Jamie Compton, the assistant coach for the Panthers, he was actually an assistant coach on the LA Kings when they beat the Vancouver Canucks in 2012 to make it all the way to the Stanley Cup final.
Wow, yeah.
However, I don't see how the Florida Panthers win this series against the Boston Bruins. I think it's going to be a tougher series than a lot of people might think, because the Florida Panthers have been there. They have been having to play playoff hockey from January all the way till now because of how behind they fell early in the season and to get to this point. But eventually when you go up against a juggernaut like the Boston Bruins are, it's a lot tougher to make that happen. And I think, I'm not saying the Boston Bruins are going to win the cup, but I do think they're going to go on an extended playoff run, and the identity change that Boston has gone through with a different coaching staff. I mean, we didn't even mention Jake DeBrusk, how he's elevated his game since Bruce Cassidy's left, and now he doesn't want to trade anymore from Boston. So that it's just a different identity change. And the over-under for the Boston Bruins at the beginning of the season was 95.5. People, they hit the way over there.
Yeah, right.
So
that's nuts.
I think the Boston Bruins are destined to go on an extended playoff run, and I think it's going to be the Boston Bruins in 6 games. I think the Florida Panthers are going to steal a game in Boston. I think the Boston Bruins are going to steal a game in Sunrise, and then the Boston Bruins are going to end up winning the next 2 to clinch their spot into the second round. As much as it hurts for me to not pick the Panthers, I have to be a little realistic here about everything that the Panthers have gone through with coaching change, the trade for Matthew Tkachuk and sending out Huberdeau and Weegar, to the cap issues that they've had with Keith Yandel's buyout. The fact that they made it here is great all on its own. Of course, don't tell the players that they're expecting to win. The players are, but it's still a step in the right direction as far as the amount of times that the Florida Panthers have been in the dance, and sometimes you just need one. But I don't think it's this year that the Panthers finally break through.
I'm going to agree with you that the Bruins will win this series. I mean, I think the gap in the standings, the gap in goal differential is just so vast that even though Florida has given the Bruins trouble this season, I see Boston coming out. I'm going to one-up you, though, and say the Bruins in 5. I think it's going to be Bruins take game 1. Game 2 will be close, maybe an overtime decision, but still in favor of Boston. I think Florida had a road record this season of 19-3 or something like that.
Yep.
Boston pretty much untouchable on home ice. I think Florida will win 1 in Florida, and then the Bruins will come back and win in game 5. I talked about the third line matchup. Didn't even mention, like Jake DeBrusk we just spoke of. They can have a guy like Trent Frederick on the fourth line who scored 17 goals this year out of nowhere. They just have, I think, I've said it before on Locked On Bruins, that to doubt the Bruins right now is to doubt the leadership group, Bergeron, Marchand.
Agreed.
I think it's like the deepest team perhaps that we've seen in Boston in the cap era, and no guarantee that they're going to win a Stanley Cup. It's so difficult to win, even 1 round, 2 rounds. Again, even this really 1 through 16 matchup, it's pretty tight, and it's not going to be a cakewalk by any stretch of the imagination.
No.
Only going to get harder as the rounds go on. But ultimately, just at every position, I see the Bruins as being the better team, and I think they're going to take it in 5 games. And I mean, who knows? We're going to see anything can happen in the Stanley Cup playoffs. Anything does happen in the Stanley Cup playoffs, and I'm pretty excited. Real quick, are there any other series that you're excited about in the first round? I know for me, I'm going to be watching the Rangers and Devils.
Yep.
That's going to be a good one. Oilers, Kings, I think is going to be pretty great. Any others that you're looking forward to around the league?
Of course, Toronto and Tampa Bay. And I'm gonna say Toronto finally breaks through this time around. The Lightning are limping right now into the playoffs. I tell people on my show, they kind of remind me of the 2014 Miami Heat to kind of relate it to the South Florida region about a few times in a row. Sometimes the mileage catches up to you. And I think this year it's going to catch up to the Tampa Bay Lightning. And
a lot of miles.
Yeah. So I think that's going to happen. I think the New York Islanders can beat the Hurricanes. I really think they could. I really think they could. The injuries on for Aho and Pacioretty and the New York Islanders do have and not Aho. I meant to say Svechnikov.
Oh, right.
Sorry. And Sorokin being in net for the Islanders, that is an advantage that the New York Islanders do have. And Matt Barzal's coming back. Yeah.
I was pretty adamant about preferring during the wild card race near the end. It was, Florida, Pittsburgh, Islanders. Pittsburgh was my number one choice. Islanders, my least preferred choice, just because of Sorokin and his ability and just how the Islanders can slow things down and make it difficult to score. So I can see that happening too. And I wouldn't be mad about it to see the Hurricanes get dumped in the first round. I think that would be something to celebrate.
Yeah, no doubt.
All right, Armando, thank you so much for this chat. I think it is going to be a fun series. I'm really excited to see Tkachuk and co match up against the Bruins and see who steps up for both teams. Thanks again to everybody for making Locked On Panthers and Locked On Bruins part of your day. Be sure to catch our respective episodes on Tuesday to recap Game 1 and subscribe on your favorite podcast app on YouTube so that you never miss a thing. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your favorite team every single day.